chowder. Okay. So I'm good there. Okay. I didn't forget this time. um, we're up to 31, I think, right at the moment. So yeah, I'm looking forward to, there's a talk, Sue, if you guys didn't see, we tried to make sure we sent it out to everybody. Are You Ready to Garden, which is Bill Lubick from Middlesex County and group, is doing a fruit trees for the home garden on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. So if you guys would care to check that out, you do have to register. And they're doing, they do their programs every Thursday night usually. So hello, Judy G for Motion. And Denise, thank you. We love that you come on. So thank you for loving our programs. And
Anne is on. Anne, you're on. Hi, Anne.
Hi, Anne. Oh, I missed
it. You did talk about hydrangeas for us earlier this year, earlier in the summer.
Yeah. Super. We're getting there. All right. So either that or we start pretty close on time, and I'll just kind of take a little more time to talk about what's going on with the next program.
Totally up to you.
It's kind of like I like to try to start as close as possible.
Right.
Because if we have to run over, we run over, which is fine. But yeah, I'd like to see us at least hit close to 50 to start anyhow. But I know that we'll have to see. You never know with the way that the with all the COVID-19 new cases and everything, and what we're going to be able to do going forward. So we're all waiting on pins and needles to see if even our county offices are going to open
Right.
for us to allow, because I don't think, Jane, you guys in Monmouth are open just only to staff.
Yeah, I don't even think that. Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if Diane was back in. Yeah, I wasn't sure if she's back in yet.
Part-time.
Okay.
But
yeah.
What we know is until August 14th, and I suspect it'll go longer than that.
We haven't. Yeah, we haven't heard anything concrete, but things aren't just going to magically open up though either. So that's what we're waiting. We're still waiting to hear what the official word is.
So my son is in his senior year at Rutgers, and they are all remote.
Yes.
Except for certain exceptions. So I suspect that will have an impact on us as well.
I do think so, but hopefully it'll be a good impact, or maybe a regrouping impact. I don't know, try to, reboot, regroup, kind of get ideas, think out things instead of trying to make them fit for what's happening at the time. So,
right.
So yeah, so we
just
should
to get our gardens back in shape at the Ag Building.
Trust, so we are too.
Right? Aren't you just itching?
Well, we saw, Patty and I see the, we're county workers are able to be in our building.
Right.
So we are, we keep looking at our display garden, and yeah, we're itching to get out there, but it's been too hot. So it's just as well. The health of the heat has been ridiculous. So
that's true.
If it's not COVID, it's the heat. So I'm good with everybody kind of staying put for a little bit.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so technically it is now 6:30, at least on my clock, we're 6:32, but I do see we hit 50. So so I will go through, and I just want to say thank you for everybody for joining us tonight, those that are on. You guys have made this an incredible experience for us. I know Patty and I are trying to, we're always looking for new ways to engage you guys, as well as the master gardeners, as well as public, and trying to find a nice, even, keep things moving and keep things growing during this pandemic. So if you guys have any questions, thank you, Karen. If you guys have any questions, we're going to use the Q&A button feature, which is, if you're run your mouse across the bottom of your screen, you should see little icons that pop up. One of the icons has 3 dots. If you click on that, it says more options. If you click on that, the Q&A button should the drop down or drop up box, whichever you want to call it. You hit the Q&A, and then you type your question in, and just make sure that you are typing to all I think that one has to say all participants, if I'm not mistaken. I can't find it right now. All participants or panelists, hosts and panelists, so that we make sure that we get you guys your questions, and it keeps it in writing for us as well when we save the talk, so we can keep those questions going. So if we can't get to you for some reason, we run out of time, something happens, we do have who sent it to us. And okay, so and then join us next two Tuesdays from now for August 11th. We are doing Seashore Gardens. Irene Wanot, who has given our talk on the deer, is going to be doing a seashore garden talk, and what plants are good
And
for the
she's on.
seashore. Oh, and Irene's
Hi,
on. Hello, Irene.
Hi, Irene.
And I really appreciate that Jane could join us tonight from Monmouth County Marcus Master Gardeners. And it's nice that we're able to do it this way because we can share our resources, which is nice, because there are limited speakers. So so I will stop talking at this point. So please put your questions in to the Q&A box, and Patty and I will answer those if we can. We will hold. Jane has some spots for us to take questions, or she can take her questions, so she does have time to answer questions as she goes. So I will give it over to Jane. Thank you, Jane.
There you go. Thanks, Sue. How
Okay.
are you?
Good.
Good evening, everybody. Let me get my buttons straight here. Uh-oh. There we go. So welcome to Irresistible Irises, easy as 1, 2, 3. As some of you know, the Master Gardener program is part of Rutgers Cooperative Extension, and we help them with their education and outreach. So here's a little fun fact about irises. Did you know that 2020 is the year of the iris as proclaimed by the National Garden Bureau? They choose crops that are genetically diverse, easy to grow, or have new breeding. Here is their website. But what I also found interesting, because I had never heard of the National Garden Bureau myself, their mission is to educate, inspire, and motivate, and they're actually part of a marketing arm for the gardening industry. So if you want more information, you can go to this website here. So why do I say that irises are irresistible? Aside from the fact that they're absolutely gorgeous, just look at these pictures. They are reliable performers year to year. So you put them in the ground and they will bloom year after year for you. Most of them bloom for over 2 weeks. If you have something like the bearded irises that have 6 to 7 flowers per stalk, they'll just go like gangbusters. That's the picture here on the bottom. This is actually my front yard. On the bottom here. I just love these. And usually there are no stake stalks. So, but if you're kind of eagle-eyed, you see here, ooh, this one fell down. And that's because my big-footed dog walked through right here and knocked that one over. But typically you don't have to stake the flowers. Unlike something like peonies that just bloom and flop, irises stay nice, straight and tall like little soldiers. They attract butterflies. And what's really important in my yard, and probably yours too, is that they are deer resistant. And my picture is proof of that. The deer will actually eat this knockout rose in the back and leave the irises alone. Go figure, gotta love it. And I'm having trouble with my buttons here. There we go. Irises come in a rainbow of colors. And so you see here, just look how beautiful they are. I mean, check out this orange. Is this not just amazing? So as we know, the rainbow is Roy G. Biv, right? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So let's see. Here's red. That's a very nice one. I like that. And if we go just a little lighter than red, we have our rose. And our pink. Look at those petals. Oops, oops. Look at those petals. Is that not gorgeous? You can't help but love these. Here's our orange. And then we can lighten up to apricot a little bit. Or go to peach. Now, I don't have the name of this one because this I got from a friend of mine. This was in my front yard. Just love it. And when you peek inside the petals, you can see even more in there. It's just, Gotta love them. Yellow, nice creamy bright yellow. Or you can try a little green. This was kind of the greenest I could find when I first put this talk together. But of course, then they came out with a better one. And Rex has this Pride of Ireland, which, of course, what else would you call it? But I don't know that I would really want to grow a green flower. I like to have the green stems and leaves, and blue. Blue, just look how pretty these are. Now you can have blue and white. In fact, there are a bunch of different irises that have white in there in the same flower. This is my version of indigo. Close enough, right? And then we get to violet. And look at, oops, look at that one with the yellow. I just love that. That's in my yard too, a Siberian Iris. And if you lighten up, we get lilac. And we can get almost black. So clearly they did some purple and blue in here because look at the little beard over here. You can see some blue coming out. But then I found another one that's really black. Don't know that I would want to grow that in my yard. If it bloomed at Halloween, that'd be pretty cool, but they don't. They bloom in the spring. But still, that's kind of nifty. And then there's white. Just look at that. My goodness. So, before we go on and talk about the irises, let's have a little bit of vocabulary to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Irises come in rhizomes and bulbs. So rhizome is a stem that grows horizontally. It's stem tissue. It has eyes or buds on the tops and the sides, and the stem comes up vertically from the rhizome. And when you think about rhizomes, think about ginger. That's kind of a common thing that I think everybody knows about. So a hand of ginger looks much like a rhizome. Now a bulb is a more rounded thing. It tapers to a point at the top, and so you'd plant it with that tapered point up top. And it's made of rings called scales, which are actually leaves. The bulb stores the food, and it contains the embryo of the new plant. So you can think of onions. That's a classic bulb. Now here's the actual picture of an iris rhizome on the left and iris bulbs on the right. So you see the rhizome. Here's the, here we go, the horizontal stem. The little eyes grow the roots, and here's the leaf coming right up vertically. And here are iris bulbs. They're often very small. You can see by the quarter here. You can see the pointed end where the stems are already starting to grow. And down here is where the roots, new roots will come out once you plant it. So you want to plant it with the point up and the roots down. So now let's talk about how easy they are. Easy as 1, 2, 3. 1, you plant the right iris in the right place, like you do for every plant. 2, you plant it properly. And 3, you sit back and have easy maintenance on all of them. The one thing you remember is that they multiply, so you divide. So now we have our little sing-along. Matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match. Find the right iris for the right place. So you want to think about how much sun does the iris need, how much water, how much sun and water are in the location that I want to plant them in, does that match? And also you want always a soil test to understand what your pH level is, which is the measure of acidity or alkalinity of your soil. Irises like it slightly acidic. So the pH scale, as you may know, goes from 0 to 14, with 7 considered to be neutral. So 6.8 to 7 is just a little acidic. A couple of the irises like it even more so. And then you want to think about what the neighbors like. Now, I don't mean your next door neighbors. I mean the neighbors of your irises when you plant them. So if you have an acid-loving plant like a rhododendron or an azalea, you may not want to put your irises too terribly close to them because they like it a little more neutral. And if you have a plant that likes a lot of water, you probably don't want to put bearded irises near them because they don't like a lot of water. So you have to think about sun and water and what the neighboring plants like. So let's look at the rhizome irises. There are 3 kinds: the bearded, the beardless, and the Dwarf Crested. So let's go through one at a time. Bearded irises are the ones that have this little frill on that bottom fall petal. That's called their beard. These like full sun, at least 6 hours of direct sunlight. They do like well-drained soil. You don't want to keep their little feet wet because you'll rot the rhizome out. Now these are the ones that have 6 to 7 flowers per stalk. And sometimes they'll bloom 2 at a time. Mine tend to bloom 1 at a time, but when you have several of them all together, like in this picture, look how lovely that is. Their foliage is kind of two-dimensional, so it's sword-like foliage that sticks up. And these kinds of irises are really nice in a border with compatible plants, which would be things like peonies. I have some of mine planted with my peonies in the front, and I just love it. And when you get the colors just right, oh, spring is just divine. Now, what's really nice about lupines is they echo that verticalness of the irises, if that's actually a word. Or if you plant it in front of a Japanese maple, what's really nice is you see the sword-like foliage of the irises in front, and then you see the fern-like, frilly, delicate foliage of the Japanese maple. That looks very nice together too. So plant it right. How do bearded irises want to be planted? Well, typically they say to plant it 1 to 2 feet away from other perennials. I have to tell you, I don't always do that. But that means that I need to separate them and move them more often. What you need to do is that the bearded irises like to be planted very shallowly. So you dig a little hole, you make a mound in the middle, and if this is your mound, you spread your roots around the mound and then fill it in only to cover the roots. You don't want to cover the whole rhizome, and you don't mulch it. And so my little phrase on the bottom says, to lure the bees, you've got to see the knees. And what that means is, what lures the bees? The flowers. So if you want flowers, you've got to see the knees. And that refers to the rhizome sticking up above the soil level. Now, do you have to have the rhizome exposed? Some say no, but you really don't want to bury it too deeply because you don't want to risk rotting the rhizomes. They like to be drier. And that's why you don't mulch them when you plant them either. So you water them in well. You see the picture on the left, the rhizomes are exposed. The other reason why I like to do that is because then I can really see if they're crowded or not. I can see what's going on. If you plant them and cover them, you won't really see what's happening. You have to judge by the leaves. So I'm nosy in my garden. I want to see what's going on. So you water them at planting time, but then once they're established, you water only if there's a dry spell. They like it to be really dry. And then number 3 is easy maintenance. So here's all you have to do. Once you plant your bearded irises, you clean up winter debris, again, so that you don't get a lot of moisture in there to rot anything out, and also so you can kind of inspect and see if you have any diseases or any insects like an iris borer. You can see if your rhizomes are healthy. If you want to fertilize, you can do that in the early spring or a month after bloom, but really very light-handed. I don't think I've ever fertilized mine, to tell you the truth. Water only during drought. Deadhead as the blooms die back, and once all the blooms on the stalk are finished, you can cut the stalk down to the rhizome because you don't want it to spend energy going to seed. You want the energy to go back into the rhizome for next year. Now, you will learn that I'm a mathematician, and we learn in mathematics to balance that equation. So we know that irises multiply, so to balance the equation, we divide. And when do you do that? Well, look at this picture with the big red circle around it. These are way too clumped together. So this is a good time to divide. The other time is if you notice that it's either not flowering or the flowers are getting kind of wimpy. Typically, they say every 3 to 5 years. Now, since I plant mine kind of closer together, I might have to divide them a little more often. So you plant them how far apart you think you feel like dividing them. And then in the fall, you can put some mulch on for the winter time. so that they're covered, and it'll help protect them from the winter. Now here's how you divide them. You take a garden fork. That way you're not going to be slicing into your rhizomes. You dig around the whole edge of the whole clump of irises that you want to divide, and you lift it out. Then you shake off all the soil, maybe brush it off, maybe use a little water, spritz it off. And usually, just like in the picture, you can grab it and separate them. They're usually not that hard to get apart. Now, a good rhizome will be nice and thick. They say as thick as your thumb. Unless you're skinny, then you want a little bit thicker than that. You want to look for the healthy roots. And in this picture, you can see these are nice long roots. They're nice and white. There's nothing eaten at it. There's nothing rotten. If you find anything rotten, whether it's a rhizome or roots, you just cut it off and throw it out. Just don't even worry about trying to fix it. Just get rid of it. And then each rhizome that you're going to separate out should have 1 or 2 leaf fans so that it has a way to photosynthesize and provide nutrition for the rhizome. Then you take a look at each one. Now you see where it says discard this with the big red arrow? This is part of the rhizome that's done. It's never going to bloom again. It'll rot away. It might attract iris borers. So you just cut it right off, and you keep the part that has the roots and the leaves. And then you'll trim the leaves down so that when you plant it, it'll put energy into rooting, and then it won't put so much energy into the leaves. So this is a good time to check for the iris borer. If the rhizome is nice and firm, you're okay. If you don't see any holes, you're okay. If you see any of that, you throw it out. If you find an iris borer, you just squish the bejesus out of it and get rid of that too. And then you can discard all that junk and plant the healthy rhizome. So here's where we prune the leaves 4 to 6 inches to encourage the root growth and reduce stress. And you replant it. And remember, to lure the bees, you've got to see the knees. So there's the little knee sticking up. Are there any questions on bearded irises so far?
Yes.
Yes.
The big one is a couple people are asking, did you say when to divide, specifically in the fall, in the spring?
Oh, after they bloom, after they bloom. So it would be, about now. You could wait until the fall because it's just so hot right now. So wait until the fall and divide them. Besides, you don't want to be outside now. Wait until when you're comfortable working outside, they'll be comfortable being divided. But really, you can do it anytime after they flower.
Okay.
Patty, do you want to ask the next one?
Yep. So after they've bloomed, how long should you wait before cutting down the flower stalk that's spent?
Oh, if all the flowers have bloomed, you can cut it down right away. You don't have to wait. It's kind of unsightly. That way it tidies up your garden too.
One of the other next question was, somebody has many irises which bloom annually, except for this year, only a few bloomed. Is there anything he could do for next spring? Specifically, what fertilizer do you recommend?
Well, I don't have a particular fertilizer that I use. Compost is always the best, of course, but it would be one that's a low nitrogen or balanced, right? So why didn't they bloom? It could be that your irises are too clumped together and you'll need to dig it up and separate, need to divide them. Or it could be that maybe they're buried a little too deeply. Or it could be you have a pest in there. If the leaves looked healthy, then I suspect it's either that they're buried too deeply or they're too crowded.
Okay.
Or maybe maybe they're in a place that they don't get enough sun. I don't know where they're located.
Okay. And,
there's another question. If they are not going to divide them now, when do I trim the leaves down?
Oh, I never trim the leaves unless I've divided and I'm going to replant. I don't trim the leaves on mine because I'm lazy. So Like it's easy not to, right? And plus you're thinking the leaves are what's doing the photosynthesis to give nutrition to the rhizome for next year. So I don't think it's a good idea to trim the leaves unless you're actually dividing and replanting.
So the one question I was going to mention as well, or is mine, I have one iris that just really always gets fungus, leaf spot on the leaves, really bad. Yeah, it's just it's an older variety. It's probably too wet, it's too humid where it is, but and I cut off the nastiest part of it neatly, but I still leave green. So if you need, somebody was asking about how do you keep it neat in the garden, then that's one way to do it. Just tip those tops off, or how, with the worst of it, and leave as much green as possible.
Right, of course, in any plant, that's what we say, right? If there's something dead, cut it off. If it's brown, cut it off.
There was one, can you cut, no, I think that was, you just answered that about cutting back the leaves while still in the ground once the iris has bloomed. We just talked about that.
Right.
And then you're going to talk about Siberian iris, so we'll let that one go. And then when do you cut back your irises if they are a reblooming iris?
Ooh. That's a really good question, and I do not know that answer because I don't have any reblooming irises. Do you?
I don't, but I don't believe they rebloom on the same flower stalk. I believe they send up, right?
They send up a new one. So once your stalk is completely done with the flowers, cut it back, and it'll send up a new flower stalk.
There you go. I learned something. Good.
Yeah. So just to reiterate too, so again, divide in the fall.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you could divide at any time, but don't stress it. Leave it till the fall. That way it has a chance to regenerate nutrition in the rhizome for next year. And then when you plant in the fall, just like any other bulb, it has time to set its roots in and get established.
And then the one question, last one, I think, so that you can, because I know you'll answer a lot of other questions. But when do you cut back the leaves? Which I do believe it means in the winter, like for winter growth. I mean, in the fall, when do you clean them up and totally cut them back? If you do, how do you do it?
I don't ever cut back the leaves unless they're brown. So when I do a winter cleanup in the spring, I'll pull out anything brown from the ground, but I don't cut the leaves. They don't die back for me.
Okay.
If they do completely, and then I pull them out. But I'll only snip the leaves down when I divide them and replant.
Okay.
All right, shall we go on then?
I think so. And then Patty, was there anything else in the chat? I don't know if you were monitoring chat. I didn't. Sorry.
I didn't actually. No, sorry.
Sorry.
We can pick up more later if you want.
Yeah, that's fine too. I don't want to keep you too long. I just didn't know if there was anything that was jumping out.
Right.
I forgot to check chat.
I'll make notes in the chat and we can get to them the next break.
Okay.
Okay.
So here we go. We get to sing again. Getting to know you, getting to know all about you. So here are the beardless irises: Japanese, Louisiana, and Siberian. So these have the falls like this, but see in this middle picture, there's no beard, right? It's the clean shaven irises. So beardless irises bloom in early spring, May to early June. Now these only have 1 or 2 flowers per stalk, and their foliage, rather than being kind of two-dimensional and sword-like and fan-like, they're more like grasses. They're much less rigid, and they kind of blow in the breeze. They're really pretty. These like they like full sun, but they'll tolerate some partial shade if that's what you have. And some of them can be in very wet soil, even at the edge of a pond. So to plant it right, these you do cover with soil. And the Siberian and the Louisiana, you want to go about 1 inch deep. And here you use a low nitrogen fertilizer, right? Because you don't want a whole lot of green leaves, you want flowers. The Siberian iris is the one that prefers even a more acidic soil. So you could even plant this next to a blueberry. It would be a happy camper. The Japanese iris, you go 2 inches deep, and again, the low nitrogen fertilizer, but I would do it very sparingly, really. And you want to mulch this 2 to 3 inches when new growth appears once you've planted it. And the very easy maintenance, again, it's very similar. You clean up winter debris, take a look around, see how everything's looking, deadhead the blooms as they die back, After every bloom on the stalk is done, you cut the stalk down. And then again, these multiply, so you divide. Now, when do you do these? Well, either you notice that they're not blooming as vigorously, or you get this funny little ring around the rosy, which when you're a little kid is fun to do. But for beardless irises, you don't want ring around the rosy. You see how it's kind of bare in the middle? That means it's just not going to do very well. You want to dig that up and divide them. So how do you do that? You dig around the clump, just like you do with the bearded irises. But these are going to be harder to lift out. That's why we have that little muscle, right? Because look at how those roots, they're just really tight in there. And in fact, if you look at this top picture on the right, it doesn't even look like there are rhizomes there at all, does it? It's not until you separate them out that you see like, oh yeah, there they are. So the bearded irises you can break easily, snap apart. These you can't. You either need to use a sharp spade or sometimes an axe, a knife, something to really get in there and cut it apart. And you're going to cut out that center kind of dead circle, get rid of that, and then break up the outer ring into clumps and replant those. Now, it's really important to keep these roots moist while they're out of the ground. You don't want them to dry up. So you do not do this division in the heat of July. You really want to do this in the fall when it's not so sunny, not so hot, okay? And then you can replant them. And again, you would bury them, well, I'm pointing with my finger, which you can't see. You would bury them to where they were originally planted, just like any other plant. The dwarf crested iris is the one that will go into partial shade or even dense shade under a tree, next to a bush that will shade it. This one's well-drained, evenly moist soil. This is a low-growing one, just a few inches tall, and it looks really beautiful in mass plantings. I kind of think of this as the iris ground cover, and they bloom in mid to late spring. Look how pretty that is. And here's its little crest on the fall petal. Isn't that cute? So the dwarf crested want to go 2 to 3 inches deep. You do not fertilize these for the first year. You allow the plants to settle in. After that first year, again, sparingly fertilize, if at all. One of the things I love about irises with their easy maintenance is you don't really have to worry about that so much. You really don't have to baby them at all. So what's their easy maintenance? Again, you clean up the winter debris, deadhead the flowers, cut the stalks once all the flowers are gone, and they multiply, so you divide, either when you find that it's not blooming as well or the blooms get smaller. And with these, again, you keep the roots moist while they're out of the ground. These guys like a lot of wet. That was a quick segment. Any other questions on these or on the bearded?
I do have a couple from the chat from earlier.
Okay, good.
One is with our sandy acidic soil in Ocean County, any recommendations for amending the soil?
Oh, yes. Well, compost is always the magic elixir, right? And so that will help. For an acidic soil, you want to go more alkaline. If it's, well, it depends on how acidic it is, right? You need a pH test to understand just how acidic it is and to match your iris to that pH level. But if you need to make it a little more alkaline, you add some lime and go a little at a time till you get the pH right.
Okay.
I'm looking.
Go. Yeah, I was gonna say I do have one. Christine is asking what type of sun is needed for the dwarf. I'm not sure if that meant dwarf bearded or the dwarf Japanese.
Crested, probably.
Yeah, okay.
That is not full sun. That's part shade to shade and wet soil. And don't worry, you should have had, you all should have handouts that has all this information on it. I know it's an awful lot. And we'll get to a review section at 1.2 before we end.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and for anybody that didn't, we'll make sure that you get the handouts.
There's a question from Debbie. Have you ever planted bearded iris in a container? And if you have, do you have any hints or tips to share?
You know, I have not.
I
But
haven't
don't
either.
see why it wouldn't do well in a container as well as in the ground. Yeah, I don't see why not. Is that my dog barking? I'm sorry.
That
My
that
is
son's
might be
that-
Patty's.
Can you tell?
No,
Oh,
I
it's
don't
yours.
think it is.
It's Jane. Okay, it's Jane's. It's
It
not
is
mine. For once.
The big dog that made my stand-up no staking stalk flop over. Yeah, that's the one you hear barking.
Yeah. We're still good in the chat on the Q&A, so there
Okay.
wasn't anything else that popped up.
Let's move on then to
I think we're
bulb
good.
irises. So in the bulb irises, we have the Dutch iris and the reticulata. I just love that word, reticulata iris. I feel so smart when I say that. So for bulbs, Debbie, these are great in pots, absolutely. These want at least 6 hours of direct sunlight, full sun, a well-drained soil. You can water these about 1 inch a week in the summer, so you don't want them to be as dry as the bearded, but certainly not as wet as the beardless. These will have 1 flower per stalk. Actually, the one in this picture kind of reminds me of a crocus, doesn't it? And they have grass-like leaves that will die back after flowering, which further reminds me of a crocus. But these are cute little, you can tell they're very short. These are cute little things. The Dutch iris want to go 3 to 4 inches deep, and the reticulata 2 to 3. These look really nice in large groups. They tend to have the 1 flower per stalk. And the Dutch iris, mostly this purple one here with the yellow, these are the ones that you'll find in floral bouquets when you get an iris in a bouquet. They're just really lovely. So they say to plant these 3 to 4 inches apart. I might put them a little closer because I just kind of break rules like that. Because who's going to rip it out of my garden? And again, easy with the fertilizer, water well at planting time like any other bulb, and they should pop up and look really beautiful. Maintenance, again, only 1 inch of water a week, really easy. Now, they say to dig up this foliage, dig up after the foliage dies back and dry the bulbs in a cool, dry place. So that's a little more maintenance than any of the others, which is why I have never planted a bulb iris. Because I just don't want to mess with trying, and also, you know, the foliage dies back. So where in heaven's name is that thing? But they really are beautiful. If you have them in a pot, you know exactly where they are, and you can dig them up, or, you know, stick the pot in the garage or in the basement or something. But so I don't do these, but they really are gorgeous, aren't they? And again, you know, easy on the fertilizer. It's supposed to be easy. Okay. Any other sweep up questions before we review?
I don't have any in the Q&A, but I just was going to make a comment. Some people for the bulb iris.
Yes.
I have done those in a pot, and I've actually taken the whole pot and sunk it in the ground so that I didn't have to worry about, but you do want to pull them. They suggest they pull them up so they don't get over wet, or little critters come and eat them. Usually they're not that eaten, but sometimes, you know, somebody gets hungry. So
But that's easy if they're in a pot in the ground. You just pull the whole pot
pull
out.
the whole pot up, put it in
Know where
someplace.
they are.
Mhm.
I may grow some bulb irises then. Thank you.
I actually have a question.
Okay.
Is it, when you divide your irises, does it take a season or 2 for them to start flowering again?
I have found no, not with the
Okay.
bearded iris. Actually, with either one. I have bearded irises and I have Siberian irises. And both, when I divided them, they bloomed that following spring
Okay.
because they were much happier, right? They were. You want happy plants.
I have
Yeah.
to say, I think
They have
most of
elbow
mine
room.
did too.
Did they? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we're still good, and
Yeah,
yeah.
we're good.
Okay, now that's an awful lot of information. So let's recap. The rhizome irises, we have bearded, where to lure the bees, you got to see the knees, not too deep. And if you could see the rhizome, you could see what's going on. The beardless, you bury, and they like more water. And the dwarf crested, you bury. The bulb irises, Dutch iris and reticulata. We just finished talking about those, right? You can put the bulbs in a pot in the ground, which I think I'm going to do next year so that I can grow some Dutch irises. I really do like those. Now, because I'm a mathematician and in prior life, before children, I was a software engineer, I really like flowcharts because that helps me organize the information. So here is your matchmaker at a glance flowchart. Do you have full sun? If the answer is no, where you want to plant your irises, then your choices are Dwarf Crested or Louisiana, which is a beardless. And then you think about, is your soil very wet? If you have clay soil that maybe puddles, yes, then you want to plant Louisiana irises. They're going to be very happy there. If you have more sandy soil that's not wet, then go for the Dwarf Crested. If you have full sun, let's go back up to the top, yes, then your choices are bearded, any bearded iris. And oh my gosh, you could tell from the very first photos I showed you, which were mostly bearded irises. There are just so many choices. Or the beardless Japanese or Siberian or bulbs. Now, if you have wet soil, you want to do Japanese or Siberian. If you have dry soil, you want to go with bearded or bulbs. Is that good? Is everybody okay with that? Excellent. Now, the other thing that I do not have a slide for, but which you either have or will be getting, is a table, because, you know, we got to do flowcharts and tables. And it will look like this, if you all can see this. It's 2 pages, and it's all the information we covered, and probably, I think, even a little more, in fairly good detail, because I couldn't keep it all in my head, so I put it in a table, and I thought you would enjoy to see that too. And so, with that, here are my photo credits. Now, this is interesting. So, the Monmouth County Master Gardeners got an iris talk from Ocean County a while back, and I took that in and I added my own spin and my own pictures and extra information. But some of the pictures were still from Mary Townsend, so thank you very much. And thank you for the inspiration for this talk. And my friend Debbie Lagatuda went to, oh my gosh, she went to Presby Gardens when it was in bloom. I have not yet gotten there, but she got the most beautiful pictures. So thank you, Debbie. Some of them were hers. A couple of them were in my yard. And here are some references for you. You might want to take a screenshot of this because I don't think I listed that anywhere. There's an American Iris Society, which is really cool. You can check out their website. Shriner's Garden is really nice. And of course, the American Iris Society, other than this book, A Garden Encyclopedia. So here is how you can contact the Master Gardeners. I don't know if anybody on here is not a Master Gardener, but if you are not, the Monmouth County Master Gardeners are available at this phone number at mgarden@co.monmouth.nj.us, or when life gets back to normal, you can visit us at our helpline. Currently, with the pandemic, we're not answering the phones either. We're just answering emails. Is that true for the Ocean County Gardeners, Master Gardeners as well? Emails.
Patty and I are answering the helpline. So unfortunately, our Master Gardeners, we don't have access that way. So
right. Anyway, but ordinarily, we'd love to have you come see us. But when you do email, please do send photos. This is with any question you have on gardening. Please do send photos. You can send, nice broad shots, and then close-ups are always really very helpful. And with that, if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, thank you so much for your attention.
Okay. Great job, Jane. There was a question about, I believe it was about pH and the bearded, the dwarf crested. I forget if somebody was asking specific, but I didn't know if that was on your sheet.
It is on the sheet. And so it says here adaptable, which means it could probably take just about any pH.
Yeah.
It doesn't really care. You're very welcome.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, you saw the chart. Yeah, I saw. I realized. Margaret has a question, or just mentioned that her Siberian iris have thrived in full shade to full sun and clay to sand. So she's had some big mix. So I think, you can experiment a bit, but most of the time sun is usually a little more preferred.
Right.
So Karen said, thank you. She learns a lot. Margaret, different Margaret said, excellent. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Hi, Irene. Thank
Irene
you.
said, "Great job, Jane. You're a pleasure to listen to." I agree.
So,
Great
Thank
talk.
you.
Thank you.
yeah.
Irene is my inspiration. She's just awesome. Anytime you can hear Irene speak, listen.
I do see a question on here. Patricia was asking where she can get the handouts for today's talk.
Hmm.
I have to check, but I believe it's going to be on our Ocean County website, our RCE of Ocean County website, and I believe it is under the lawn and garden section. And when you go there, you'll see the past recordings as well as the the handout should be there. The other question, before anybody really jumps off, we do have a survey after when I stop the program, when I close this down, it'll pop up for you in your browser. So if you could please take a time to do that, that would be awesome. Somebody wanted to make a comment. What is the book again? Karen was asking, there was a book that you mentioned.
Yes, here. From the American Iris Society, Irises, a garden encyclopedia.
Okay, all right.
So you can take a screenshot of that if you know how to do it on your computer. On my PC, I hit the little Windows icon and print screen on my
Yeah, so that can work, yes.
keyboard.
Took a picture of one of your slides with my phone.
Oh, that's a good idea too.
There's
Yeah.
another one. So Vanessa asked, is there anything that you can recommend or plants to mingle in with the bearded iris? Do you have a specific go-to companion plant?
I like them with peonies myself,
Mhm.
but I've really come to love them with the knockout roses that I have because my rose bush is tall and so it's a nice height. I also have some in front of yews, and those were the orange ones, and so the orange in front of the green, the evergreen yew, is pretty cool. Although I'm going to move them because I have them in front of my red brick house, and I kind of went ooh, so I'm going to move those someplace else and put maybe lavender ones there. But yeah, I'd love them so much. I'd love them with dandelions. I don't care.
I have actually done them with, since lavender is blooming just a little after, but at least you have some foliage. I've done it with lavender to kind of give you a cloud to go with the,
Nice.
nice foliage difference. And then also you want to think, okay, if your irises are done blooming by June, what are you going to put there? So maybe a secondary plant, black-eyed Susans or something like that too. The foliage is kind of cool with that nice bright green and then adding some other color too.
Yeah, that's true too. Good point. And also the black-eyed Susans and even Echinacea, they're tall enough to not quite overshadow the foliage of the bearded iris, but to complement it. And then you get those different textures.
Yeah. And it gives a nice eye movement in the garden, I
Mhm.
think. I think that's a good thought. And Elga or Igla says, thank you very much. Informative talk.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And so yeah, so I'm not sure. Judy mentioned she likes them around a tree. So
Most of my trees are too big. There's too much shade. Or I
yeah,
don't feel like digging in and around the roots.
depending on the size, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Or the kind of tree.
Okay.
I see. I don't think we answered this one.
Oh.
For bearded iris, is it best to remove the spent flowers immediately to provide more energy, or does cutting hurt the remaining stem?
Oh no, you want to cut this. You want to sometimes, quite frankly, I just yank it out. The spent bloom, only because it looks yucky and what ends up happening, it flops over and then like sap or something kind of drips out and it's really messy. So I just either pull it out, or pull it off, or snip it out. Yeah, it doesn't hurt the plant at all.
Yeah, that's basically what I do.
Yeah. Because they do, right? They get soggy. They almost like gelatinize or something.
Yeah. I have my chickens kind of, somebody mentioned something about something wasn't blooming in their garden and why. I think that might have been your sister-in-law, Patty, or your sister, excuse me. And I think it was possibly because of the, I think it was Siberian Iris.
Yeah.
I forget the question. And I think maybe because they had gotten buried, maybe they got a little too deep. Oh, Japanese. Elizabeth, there she is. Japanese. Sorry.
She's in Pennsylvania, though. She does So just for reference, she does have like a heavier clay kind of wet soil. But, you know, I'm talking for her only because I know her yard. She does have spotty sun. She doesn't get like full sun.
Yeah, you know, it's hard to say. I would check the pH of the soil, and then just for kicks, maybe, you know, get some compost or peat moss or something in there to lighten it up just a little if it's really a heavy clay.
You need like a
Check for
pickaxe.
sun. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the other problem.
Yeah.
But check for sun. Check if there's any kind of ring in there. Maybe they need to be divided. It's hard to say when I can't see it.
Yeah, I know.
Well, you can always send pictures to either Patty or myself or to Jane, to the Master Gardeners in Monmouth.
Right.
We can all try to take a stab at it and see if there's a question we
Yeah.
can help with. But yeah, I don't see
Also,
anything
you
else.
know, one of the things I found is that what I think might be a full sun spot maybe isn't. Just because you go out at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon and it's full blazing sun doesn't mean it's 6 hours of sun. So one thing to do is take pictures of your location throughout the day, and you might be surprised how much or how little sun you have.
And I did find that my chickens were digging in my daylily bed, which has some irises, and they like to kick the soil everywhere. So they buried the iris that has the most fungal issues, and I have rot now in some of those. So it could be something that maybe a little too extra mulch, maybe some, you know, something. It could be something. It may just have been that tipping point this year compared to another year or something like that. Because she said her irises bloomed really well last year.
Oh,
So to not have any,
So-
that's kind of yeah, something that's
right.
going.
So really think about what changed from last year to this year. I'm hoping there weren't any chemicals strewn that maybe got on the irises or something.
Or if the trees got bigger, if there's trees nearby.
If the trees got bigger, maybe too much fertilizer, maybe too heavy nitrogen, so you got a lot of leaves but no blooms.
So this is
Yeah.
what we do. We troubleshoot,
I
whether we're
know.
master gardeners or just, you know, we try to troubleshoot and see what possibilities there could be.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Probably not any pests.
I don't think you.
You wouldn't have the leaves.
Leaves.
Right. So I suspect the roots and all are healthy, but
Jane, on my end, I see a couple people saying thank you. I don't have any other specific questions, I don't believe, on my end here. So I really, really want to thank you for your talk. It was excellent.
you're very welcome.
You are very easy to listen to. I love it. I loved your iris. You did your setup, like you said, you were going to do your iris banner behind
Yeah, do
you.
you like that? Isn't
I
that
love it.
gorgeous?
It looks beautiful. It shows actually rather well.
Irises are simply irresistible, even in a picture.
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
I love them.
I do puzzles. So there's a good puzzle, iris puzzle. That's a good one.
I do
So.
too. Yeah.
So there we go. But I want to say thank you. And for those that are still on, we were the 6-question questionnaire will pop up as soon as I finish. So I want to say thank you again, Jane, and hopefully we'll
Thank you, Jane.
yeah,
You're welcome.
see you around for another round, maybe in the fall. Like see
I
what
would
see
love
what
it.
you might be up to. So all right, well, thank you
Okay.
all. Thank you,
Good night,
Patty, and
all.
Thank
see
you.
you guys in 2 weeks, unless I see you on the
So
meeting
pretty.
tomorrow, or not tomorrow, Thursday for the tree fruits. You are ready to garden.
Right.
Are you ready to garden? I can't
Right.
talk, but all right, guys.
Okay, good night.
Thanks. Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Jane.
You're welcome.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Okay, I think. Oh, I thought I just ended it, but I guess it didn't.
I see you.
I know. I still see you. All right, hold on. End event.